January 1918. A cold wind cuts across the streets of New York as a line of young black soldiers marches toward the docks. Their uniforms are new, their boots barely broken in, but the looks they receive from the crowds are old, older than the nation itself. Whispered insults drift through the winter air. Some white officers refuse to even meet their eyes. These men are members of the 15th New York Infantry, later known as the Harlem Hellfighters, and they are leaving to fight for a country that still refuses to fight for them. Before their ship even leaves the harbor, the first wound is inflicted. The U.S. Army segregates their training, segregates their housing, and segregates their hope. White units drill on open fields. Black units drill in frozen mud. White soldiers sleep in heated barracks. Black soldiers sleep in drafty tents that collapse under winter storms. The message is unmistakable. America needs their bodies, not their dignity. The War Department assigns them shovels instead of rifles. They dig trenches while white divisions train for combat. They unload cargo while other regiments learn artillery. Newspapers call them laborers, not soldiers. Officers tell them they will never see the front line. And yet, every man standing in that muddy formation knows he enlisted for the same reason any American did, because he believed service could prove his worth to a nation that doubted it. Then comes the deepest cut. When the 15th marches through Spartanburg, South Carolina, the local police threaten to arrest them for walking too proudly. White mobs surround their camp at night. Letters from Washington warn them not to retaliate, not to defend themselves, not to forget their place. The army fears their courage more than the enemy. And still, they march. They march through insult, humiliation, and the weight of a uniform that grants no respect at home. They march knowing that German bullets may be kinder than American laws. They march into a war fought on two fronts, one in Europe and one in their own country's conscience. By the time their ship touches French soil, the pain is already carved deep. They have trained under discrimination, slept under threats, marched under hatred, and endured a military system designed to break their pride before they ever meet the enemy. The Harlem Hellfighters have not fired a single shot, yet the war against them has already begun. When the Harlem Hellfighters finally reach Europe, they expect the U.S. Army to unleash them. Instead, the betrayal sharpens. White American commanders refuse to deploy them in combat. They claim the men are unfit, untrainable, and unreliable under fire. It is the same script used against black soldiers for generations, rewritten only to justify keeping them out of glory. French generals, desperate for reinforcements, offer to take them. The U.S. agrees instantly. They would rather hand black Americans to a foreign army than allow them to fight under the American flag. The Hellfighters become the only U.S. regiment transferred away completely, not because they were weak, but because their excellence would humiliate the lies built into Jim Crow. The Army even sends a secret memo to French officers, warning them that black soldiers are dangerous, emotionally unstable, and should never be praised. They instruct the French not to shake their hands, not to socialize with them, not to treat them as equals. The memo is an insult wrapped in fear, the fear that someone might see these men's true worth. But the French laugh off the American warnings. They hand the Hellfighters real rifles, real helmets, and real missions. And within days of reaching the trenches, the truth explodes like a shell in the night. German forces attack under cover of darkness, and the Hellfighters refuse to break. Two soldiers, Henry Johnson and Needham Roberts, hold off an entire German raiding party alone. Johnson fights with his rifle until it jams, then with the butt of the gun, then with a bolo knife, then with his bare hands. He drags his wounded comrade to safety while hacking through attackers in the mud. The Germans retreat in panic, leaving behind weapons, bodies, and disbelief. Johnson becomes the first American of any race to earn France's highest military honor. But the U.S. Army refuses to even acknowledge his heroism. Newspapers in America barely mention the story. White officers downplay it. His own country pretends the battle never happened. The message is clear. Valor is only valuable when it stays invisible. And still, the Hellfighters push forward. They patrol the deadliest sectors. They fight in trenches soaked with blood and chemical gas. They hold the line where other regiments falter. During one brutal stretch, they endure non-stop bombardment for weeks without relief. Their rifles overheat. Their boots rot. Their rations spoil. Yet they never yield an inch of ground. The anger comes not from their suffering, but from how the system responds to their strength. Each victory is met with silence. Each act of courage is swallowed by official reports. Every time they outfight white units, the Army rewrites the story to protect the hierarchy. The Harlem Hellfighters are proving themselves on the battlefield every hour. And with every hour, America's fear of their success grows deeper. The deeper the Hellfighters push into France, the more impossible their achievements become. They are assigned sectors abandoned by other regiments, places where the mud is thick with bones and the air tastes like metal. Yet every time the German lines test their strength, the Hellfighters answer with precision, discipline, and a level of endurance that astonishes even seasoned veterans. Word spreads through the French ranks. When a line is collapsing, call the Americans in the dark helmets. When a flank is breaking, send the regiment that never bends. When a village needs to be retaken, give it to the men from Harlem who fight like they were forged from iron. In the forest of Argonne, shells crash so violently that entire trees explode into splinters. The ground shakes like a living thing. White units beg for withdrawal after days of bombardment. The Hellfighters hold for weeks. They dig new trenches when old ones disappear under artillery fire. They rotate wounded men back into formation because replacements never arrive. Their commander stands stunned at the sheer resilience of soldiers who were once dismissed as laborers. During a major German offensive, enemy forces launch wave after wave across no man's land, convinced they can break the sector guarded by a single black regiment. But the Hellfighters fire with terrifying accuracy. Machine gun crews reload so quickly their barrels glow red. Riflemen shoot through smoke so thick they can barely see their own hands. When the Germans retreat, the ground is littered with helmets and abandoned rifles. The line the Hellfighters defended remains unbroken. Then comes the moment that transforms their reputation into legend. The French need a full-scale assault to push through heavily fortified positions near Seychelles. Multiple regiments are assigned to advance together. Most fall behind under the rain of shells. The only unit that reaches its objective on time, holding the flank alone, is the Harlem Hellfighters. They take trenches with bayonets. They fight house to house. They capture German positions deeper than any American regiment that day. For their actions, the French award the entire regiment the Croix de Guerre, the highest honor they can give to foreign soldiers. The medal shines against their dark uniforms, a symbol of respect their own country refuses to grant. French civilians cheer them in the streets. French soldiers salute them without hesitation. In Europe, they are celebrated. In Europe, they are seen. In Europe, they are equals. But their greatest accomplishment is not a single battle or medal. It is time. No American unit spends more days on the front lines. Not one. The Harlem Hellfighters fight for 191 days without surrendering a position, without losing a trench, without retreating once. No other American regiment in World War I matches their record. Their courage reshapes every lie told about black soldiers. The claim that they lack discipline collapses under months of unbroken combat. The claim that they lack intelligence evaporates in their flawless coordination under fire. The claim that they lack bravery is destroyed by every midnight raid, every counterattack, every moment they choose to stand instead of run. What makes their story extraordinary is that none of this is achieved under fair conditions. They succeed despite being denied support. They triumph despite being deprived of reinforcements. They win despite the very institution they serve working tirelessly to keep their victories quiet. The Harlem Hellfighters prove something the U.S. government never wanted the world to see. Black excellence not as exception, but as standard. Not as surprise, but as expectation. Not as footnote, but as legacy. In the smoke-filled trenches of France, they do what America refused to imagine. They become the most effective fighting force the United States sends to the Great War. The Harlem Hellfighters should have returned to America as national heroes. But the moment their ship approaches New York, the erasure machine starts moving. The same War Department that refused to let them fight under the U.S. flag now refuses to let the nation see what they achieved under a foreign one. Their 191 days in combat vanish from official reports. Their medals disappear from newspapers. Their victories are rewritten as French operations, as if their rifles had spoken a different language. White officers warn journalists not to overpraise colored troops. Politicians insist the regiment was merely attached support, not a spearhead force. The Army's own communiques shrink their record to a footnote. A unit that fought longer than any American regiment is described as adequate. A unit that never lost a trench is labeled satisfactory. The truth is not inconvenient. It is dangerous, because if America admits what the Hellfighters accomplished, the entire racial mythology that underpins Jim Crow collapses. You cannot claim black men lack courage when they hold the line in hellish bombardments. You cannot claim black men lack discipline when they execute flawless maneuvers under fire. You cannot claim black men lack loyalty when they defend a nation that openly despises them. The facts threaten the fiction, so the facts must be buried. While white divisions march in parades, the Hellfighters are quietly diverted, separated, and instructed to stay out of public attention. The celebration plan for their homecoming is canceled without explanation. Their commanders take credit for French medals they did not earn. Officers who never saw combat receive promotions. Henry Johnson, whose bravery stunned France, is denied disability pay and forced to return to manual labor. His wounds never heal. His records are lost. His heroism is erased so thoroughly that decades will pass before the United States even acknowledges it. And the attack on memory continues. Newspapers run stories claiming black soldiers brought immorality back from Europe. Politicians warn that praising them will inflame racial tensions. Military historians omit their name entirely from official summaries of the war. The U.S. does not simply forget them. It chooses to forget them. The silence is intentional. The absence is engineered. The men who fought German machine guns return to find they cannot vote safely in their own neighborhoods. They return to segregated schools, segregated streets, segregated hospitals. They return to a country where lynchings rise the same year they come home. Some are beaten while still wearing their uniforms. The message is cruel and unmistakable. You are good enough to die for this country. You are not allowed to be honored by it. Even their nickname is twisted. Hellfighters. Once a badge of fear among German troops, becomes a name used without context, as if the fury they unleashed in France was accidental rather than earned. America loves the myth of bravery, but rejects the bodies that embodied it. The Hellfighters defeated the enemy abroad, the enemy at home, the erasure, the distortion, the refusal to acknowledge their humanity proves harder to fight. What happens next determines whether their story remains buried or finally reclaimed. The story of the Harlem Hellfighters does not end with silence. Silence is only the wound. The awakening comes when we finally understand what that silence was meant to prevent. Their erasure was not a mistake. It was a strategy. Because if America had admitted what these men achieved, If it had spoken their names with pride instead of fear, every lie about black inferiority would have cracked like thin ice. When a regiment fights longer than any American unit, the myth collapses. When a regiment holds every position under impossible fire, the myth dissolves. When a regiment earns medals denied to white soldiers, the myth dies. The Hellfighters did not fail America. America failed the truth. And the truth is far more powerful than the country that tried to bury it. What makes their legacy extraordinary is not the medals they earned, but the meaning their courage carried. They showed the world that black excellence does not depend on permission. It does not need validation. It does not wait for recognition from institutions built to deny it. The Hellfighters proved that valor grows even in hostile soil, that brilliance survives even under the weight of segregation, and that dignity remains even when respect is withheld. And that is why their story matters now more than ever. It reminds us that erasure is not passive. It is a weapon. But remembrance is also a weapon, sharper and enduring. Every time we speak their names, we undo a century of historical sabotage. Every time we recount their victories, we rewrite the narrative that was forced upon them. Every time we acknowledge their place in American history, we reclaim the ground stolen from them at home. The awakening is simple but seismic. Black soldiers were never the footnote. They were the backbone. They were not exceptions. They were the standard. They were not waiting to be saved. They were saving a nation that could not see their worth. The Harlem Hellfighters fought for a democracy that denied them democracy. And despite that betrayal, they built a legacy stronger than the silence meant to contain it. What they left behind is not just a record of military brilliance. It is a challenge, a demand, a call to rebuild the historical truth that was dismantled to maintain a lie. Their story forces us to confront the past not as a tragedy, but as a reminder of what Black Americans achieved when the world expected nothing. The men who were erased deserve more than memory. They deserve restoration. They deserve recognition. They deserve the truth spoken without fear. Because the Hellfighters were never fighting for a parade. They were fighting for a future, one where their courage could no longer be hidden. Their enemy tried to silence them. History tried to forget them. But we remember. And remembering is the first act of justice.